Hi book friends. In this video I am going to read the first chapter of quite a few books that I have on my TBR to decide if I'm going to roll them over to 2025 or unhaul them. So I have a lot of books rolling over on my TBR into 2025, and I feel like a lot of people say this, myself included, but I'm going into the new year with the goal of trying to clear or make a lot smaller my TBR that I have right now currently. I'm calling it my 2024 TBR, but the fact is most of these books have been on the TBR for a couple of years. Now, I am not the type of person who wants to completely clear my TBR. I love having a group of books to choose from every month. I love to play games and try to fit the books to the certain prompts. To me, that is just so much fun. I like to have a list. I like to have a plan. But the 2024 TBR is pretty dang long. So in this video, over the course of a couple of days, I am going to read the first chapter of about 10 books that I've had on my TBR for a while. And the reason that I'm picking these 10 books is not just because I've had them on my shelf for a really long time. It's just because I kind of think that my reading tastes have changed and they just don't hold that interest for me anymore. But I want to give them a fair chance before I kick them out. I have not looked at the chapter lengths of these books, so if one of the chapters is really, really long, I may only read part of it. If one of them is really, really short, then I may read a couple of them. There's no rules. So let's get into it. The first book that I have that I'm going to read a chapter of is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. I also have Wild is the Witch by the same author on my shelf, so that will also be getting a chapter read in this video. All right. Let's give the first chapter a try. I feel like I should give you a quick synopsis in case you're not familiar with this book. Clara Densmore is an Everwitch. For centuries, witches have maintained the climate, their power peaking in the season of their birth. But their control is faltering as the atmosphere becomes more erratic. All hope lies with Clara, whose rare magic is tied to every season. All right, let's give it a go. Right off the bat, we have a beautiful illustration. Summer. In the first chapter, we are following Clara, and she is at some sort of a college. She is graduating, talks about a campus. Her and other witches that represent the four seasons are training to put out wildfires. And as a summer witch, it is up to her to cause it to rain to put out the wildfires that the other seasons have started. And she fails. It is left up to some of the other witches to come together to make it rain. We also learn that there are non-magical people. They are called shades, and they have taken advantage of the witch's magic, and they think that the world is infinite, that magic is infinite, and they have developed and overdeveloped the land, and they have become greedy. And because of this, the world is pushing back. The earth is pushing back, and it's becoming clear that these witches that represent the seasons, we don't know much about their magic yet. I don't know much about what they can do or what they're responsible for, are having a hard time reigning in nature. As I said, the earth is pushing back. I don't know when this book is set as of yet from just reading the first chapter. So for right now, this is going to go in my maybe pile. Now I have Wild is the Witch by the same author, and I'm going to be honest with you. I thought one was a sequel of the other. The synopsis for this one says, after a night of magic turns deadly, Iris Gray vows to never let another person learn that she is a witch. It doesn't matter that the Witches' Council found her innocent or that her magic was once viewed as a marvel. That night on the lake changed everything. Now settled in Washington, Iris hides who she really is and vents her frustrations by writing curses that she never intends to cast. And while she loves working at the wildlife refuge she runs with her mother, she loathes Pike Alder and the witch-hating, aspiring ornithologist who interns with them. When Pike makes a particularly hurtful comment, Iris concocts a cruel curse for him. But just as she is about to dispel it, an owl swoops down and steals the curse before flying far away from the refuge. The owl is a powerful amplifier, and if it dies, Iris's dark spell will be unleashed not only on Pike, but on everyone in the region. Forced to work together, Iris and Pike trek through the wilderness in search of the bird that could cost Pike his life. But Pike doesn't know the truth, and as more dangers arise in the woods, Iris must decide how far she is willing to go to keep her secret safe. So this one has a prologue. So I'm going to read the prologue and then decide if I feel like I need to read the first chapter as well. Okay, so I read the prologue, and I think I've made my decision. I'm just not feeling it for these two books. I don't feel excited. I don't feel like I need to pick them up and read them. I don't feel like I can't wait until they make it on my TBR. It's hard because I've heard good things about these, but it's been a while since they have been popular. So it's been a while since I've heard anybody talk about them. So I think I'm going to put these in my unhaul pile. But if you can convince me in the comments to keep them, maybe I will decide otherwise. All right, I am back trying to declutter my 2024 TBR by reading one chapter of all of the books that I'm thinking about unhauling before I make the final decision. And today's book is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I don't know what the target audience for this is. I want to say middle grade, possibly YA. The only thing I've read by V.E. Schwab is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I didn't love it. I do have the Darker Shade of Magic books on my TBR. I'm not going to unhaul those. I'm going to definitely give those a chance. All her life, Olivia Pryor has wondered who she really is and where she belongs. Her only clue is a slim, battered journal, her mother's journal, full of entries that seem to show that she was unraveling and drawings that look like blots of ink, until Olivia notices a hand, a door, a bloom, a skull. Then a letter beckons Olivia home, to Gallant, the one place her mother's journal warns her never to go. Olivia goes anyways, of course she does. What she finds is her last living relative in her family's manor, a manor with a ballroom and a sitting room and a study and a sprawling, vibrant garden, and the crumbling ruin of a garden wall within an iron door, a door she must never open. But no one at Gallant sent Olivia that letter, and no one will tell her what haunts her cousin's dreams, what happened to her mother, or what lies on the other side of the wall. Did the shadows call Olivia home? What will they ask of her in return? I'm loving the artwork on the interior. I think that it sounds super intriguing. I love a story with a manor. I also have a good track record with books about doors. The dedication in this says, to those who go looking for doors, are brave enough to open the ones they find, and sometimes bold enough to make their own. So I think that this book sounds pretty promising so far. So let's go ahead and read the first chapter. So it is actually the next day. I took this upstairs to read a chapter and then fell asleep, and then the night got away from me. Right off the bat, I can tell you I'm keeping this book on my TBR. I will be trying to get to it in 2025. So in the first chapter, we learned about a girl named Olivia who lives at this, what they call a school, but it's more like an orphanage. And instead of getting her education and academics, she's learning to do things like cook and clean and be a quiet woman. But I can already tell from the first chapter that she's going to stir some trouble up. There is some information in here that is not fleshed out, so I'm still a little bit confused by it, and it has to do with some sort of a creature that is dead near a shed, and there's a floating eyeball. I'm not sure what that's about yet. But what I loved about the first chapter, and based on what I know from reading the summary, the first chapter was very gray. It talked about there not being a lot of color. Every once in a while, some grass would grow up through the pebbles. Olivia found a little yellow flower one time. But knowing that she goes through a doorway, I am predicting that the land or whatever is on the other side of the doorway is going to be stark contrast to the first chapter. So I'm predicting that there's going to be color and that the whole book is not going to be gray and drab and dreary. The other thing that we learn in chapter 1 is that Olivia is mute, and I think that that's really interesting. I have not read many books, if any, that I can think of where the main character is mute. So I'm looking forward to digging into more of her backstory, finding out what her trauma is, figuring out why she's mute, seeing if it's going to change at any point throughout the book. So book 3, staying on my TBR. The next book I have picked out to challenge is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Only thing I know about this book is that it's dark academia and it isn't a series. The synopsis says, I decided that Orion Lake needed to die after the second time he saved my life. Everyone loves Orion Lake, everyone else that is. As far as I'm concerned, he can keep his flashy combat magic to himself. I'm not joining his pack of adoring fans. I don't need help surviving the Skullomance, even if they do. Forget the hordes of monsters and cursed artifacts. I'm probably the most dangerous thing in the place. Just give me a chance and I'll level mountains and kill untold millions, make myself the dark queen of the world. This is one that BOOKTOK heavily influenced me to buy. Generally in the past, I have liked dark academia enough to continue reading it. I'm interested to figure out or find out what the Skullomance is. I'm headed into work now, so when I get home, I'll read the first chapter in this book and come back with a decision. Okay, I have only read... Okay, so I have only read this much. And I can already tell you that I like the writing. I don't know if I love the writing yet, but the writing appeals to me. And this reminds me of Hogwarts. Two things that are a plus in my book, so this is off to a very promising start. Okay, I was right. I didn't even have to read one whole chapter of A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik before I knew that I wanted to read the whole thing. So this will be staying on my shelf for 2025. Holy cow, I forget every single year how hectic December can be. So I just threw some potatoes in the oven to roast, and while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to read the first chapter of the next book on the list. This is the Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. This was Barnes & Noble's best book of the year, or book of the year for 2023. And just like this year's pick, I had never heard of this before it was chosen. I probably would not have picked it up, but it was gifted to me. So it's literally been on my shelf since last Christmas Eve, and I just don't know how I feel about it. This takes place in 1972 when workers in Pennsylvania are digging foundations for new housing development. The last thing that they expect is to uncover a human skeleton. Who the skeleton was and how it got buried there are just two of the long-held secrets that have been kept for decades by the residents of Chicken Hill, the dilapidated neighborhood where immigrant Jews and African Americans lived side by side, sharing ambitions and sorrows. This is one of those books that sounds really good, but every time I look at it, I never get excited about it. So I guess we'll see what the first chapter brings. I was hoping after I read the first chapter that it would be clear to me whether I needed to keep this or unhaul it, and I'm very mid about it. So for right now, this may change before the end of the video, and if it does, I'll give you an update. For right now, I think it's gonna stay on my TBR, but that's not 100% yet. I think I need to think about this first chapter for a little bit and just kind of sit with it a little bit before I make my final decision. So I'm gonna put this in the maybe pile, even though I'm leaning more towards the keep it. All right, so I am coming at you again in the middle of a very busy evening. I have dinner on the stove. I'm just waiting for it to cook. So I thought I would give the next book a try. The next book is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This one, again, I've had for a very long time. The only thing I know about this is that it's dark academia. Each decade, only the 6 most uniquely talented magicians are selected to earn a place in the Alexandrian Society, the foremost secret society in the world. The chosen will secure a life of power and prestige beyond their wildest dreams, but at what cost? Each of the 6 newest recruits has their reasons for accepting the society's elusive invitation, even if that means growing closer than they could have imagined to their most dangerous enemies, or risking unforgivable betrayal from their most trusted allies. They will fight tooth and nail for the right to join the ranks of the Alexandrians, even if it means they won't all survive the year. Sounds good, sounds promising, sounds something that I would like, Don't know why I haven't read this yet. Let's give it a shot. I read the first chapter of Atlas 6. Actually, it's a chapter and then a little note or a couple of pages before the chapter that give you a little bit of history, a little bit of lore. This really grabbed my attention. I'm a little nervous because I have heard that the other books in the series aren't as good. I have heard that they kind of go downhill. And I did read one book by Olivia Blake, Alone with You in the Ether, and I did not enjoy it. And I have no idea what happens in this book. I have read no summaries, no spoilers, no anything. No inside information. The 2 characters, Libby and Nico, that it talk about in the first chapter are giving me major Hermione and Draco vibes. And I know that this is the second book in this video that has reminded me in some way of Harry Potter. That's just the way it is. So this one is going to be staying on my shelf. The last book of this video is one that has caused me a lot of, I don't want to say stress or grief or whatever, but here's the situation with this book. This is the first book that I purchased because I was influenced by TikTok or BookTok. I can't remember which one it was. We moved into our house in 2020 and we had an extra room that we turned into a library. So I did a bunch of book research and I just kind of went a little bit crazy, to be honest with you. It's where a lot of the books that are still on my TBR came from. But this was the very first book. And it has been on so many TBRs. And I think it sounds amazing. And it just never makes it into the rotation. It is dual timeline from what I can tell. And it has some sort of a like tests or trial trope. Can you guess what it is? Furyborn. This has been in videos where I say if I don't read it by the end of the year, I'm going to get rid of it. I have taken it off my shelf to put it in the Unhaul pile. Sneaky little sucker keeps making it back on my shelf. I just can't let go of this. This might be the time. I'm either going to commit or get rid of it. 2 young women centuries apart, so dual timeline, love that, hold the power to either save their world or doom it. When assassins ambush her best friend, the Crown Prince Riel Darian risks everything to save him, exposing her ability to perform all 7 kinds of elemental magic. The only people who should possess this power are a pair of prophesied queens, a queen of light and a queen of blood. To prove that she is the Sun Queen, Riel must endure the 7 trials to test her magic. If she fails, she will be executed unless the trials destroy her first. And then the next paragraph in the summary starts with 1,000 years later. I love that. Everything about this book is like, Jen is going to love this book. But Jen has never grabbed this book, and I don't know why. So I'm going to jump in and see if I can make a decision and close out this video. So the first chapter is not really a chapter. It's like a prologue, and then chapter 1 says 2 years earlier. So I only read the prologue, even though it was like 10 pages. And let me tell you what, this book does not start off lightly. It goes right in for the kill. It starts off with a bang. It starts out strong. It starts out with a lot of action, which is really good because it did what it was supposed to do. It made me want to read more. This is going back on my shelf for the umpteenth time. Also, I decided that I am going to unhaul the Heaven and Earth grocery store. It just doesn't spark joy in me when I see it. So this video, reading the first chapter of a bunch of books that I was unsure about, led me to unhaul 3 books from my TBR that is left over from 2024. So those will be 3 books that I will not be rolling into 2025. It was The Nature of Witches, The Wild is the Witch, which I've already unhauled. They're not even in my house anymore. And the Heaven and Earth grocery store. I had a lot of fun doing this. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Did I make any mistakes or did I make good decisions? I am looking forward to hanging out with you in 2025, and I appreciate all your support, your likes, your comments, your subscribes. And until next video, happy reading.